Let's speak now to Alex Halavais. He is an associate professor of critical data studies at Arizona State University. Thanks so much for being with us. First of all, is this the right thing to do on behalf of these three tech companies?
I think so. I think it's the prudent thing to do. It's a little surprising it's taken this long for it to come about, but it makes sense given the circumstances.
Okay, why so, though? Why is the technology so flawed?
Well, it's been flawed from the start, and there are probably a couple of things that lead to that. A large part of it is the developers who worked with camera technology, and this isn't recent. This is going back to early cameras that could do facial tracking, for example, for webcams. Did not have a lot of test subjects who were of color. And as a result, they didn't identify dark faces even then. So those who have complexions that are darker simply are not identified as easily by any of these systems. And before this, most companies were willing to sell these products, including facial recognition, despite this flaw, because they didn't feel it was as important that they could identify people across the spectrum of ethnicities and complexions.
Okay, but I mean, is there a potential problem here because the technology is already there? So couldn't governments and police forces just adapt their own mechanisms and use it anyway?
I suspect that they will. And so this is largely a statement of policy and of interest, I suppose. And so these companies have indicated that what is needed is strong regulation. Strong federal regulation that indicates, I suspect, not only how it can be used by police forces, but more broadly. And I think we see the corners of that in places like California and elsewhere, where there have been moratoriums and other kinds of restrictions on its use. But yes, these companies alone will not have the long-term effect. They're simply signaling that there needs to be some form of regulation.
Okay, and tell us what you think that regulation should be. What would make it fair and safe?
That's a very tricky question, right? So there are a number of people, especially on the academic side, who've done auditing of different kinds of algorithmic systems, and facial recognition being one of them, to show the degree to which they tend to be discriminatory. Part of the problem here, though, is this is all tied up with a larger question of whether we really want to be able to identify individuals in pictures in the first place. It may be that by identifying them in the first place, even if the technology does so equally well for faces of all ethnicities, it is still a threat to our privacy and to the government being able to identify and link people to their activities.
Okay, what about those who argue, though, that this is actually just an upgraded, more sophisticated version of fingerprints that have helped solve so many crimes?
It is, but there is a difference in kind as well. There are so many images out there right now. I don't think people recognize just how pervasive video and photographs online are. And so far we've kind of had this veil of expecting that those were unidentifiable, or at least more difficult to identify. We don't have the same kind of technology to slurp up all of those fingerprints in the environment at once. And so this really is a much different kind of a threat.
Okay, Alex Halavais, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.